So Mac McClung just put on a clinic at the 2023 NBA dunk contest, and he was wearing the Puma Rise Nitro, which just may have been the perfect shoe for that kind of dunk execution. Let me explain why and why it may actually help you as well. Here we go. Now, when you look at the Rise Nitros online or on TV, they do look like a little bit more of a minimalist shoe. However, when you get them on foot, they actually are a little bit more of a substantial shoe, and nowhere is that more evident than in the uppers. Now, the most striking part of the uppers of the Rise Nitro is this elastic mesh wrap that goes around the lace line that encases it and protects it. Now, if you look at it on the microscope, you get these really chunky weaves as well as really tight weaves. And what I noticed is as you go from the tips of the toes up further into the midfoot, it gets a little bit tighter, getting a lot more constricting. And what that does is it allows your forefoot to have way more degrees of freedom, allow a little bit more creativity, as well as allowing that wrap in the midfoot to have a little bit of function, giving a little more compression as well as a little more containment. What I also like about this two-layer design is the inside layer actually has this foam padding here in the toe box to kind of give you a little more compression around the toes as well. So it gives you a little more of a glove-like fit without the discomfort of wearing a shoe like a half size down or just one that's really kind of constricting and almost makes your toes start to go numb. But the one thing that's good for Mac McClung is that he can get pretty much as many pairs of these as he wants, because if you do start to wear down a shoelace or break one, it is pretty hard to relace them, as these outrigger laces go all the way into this wrap here. Now, what I do like is they are paneled and stitched into this panel, so it does give a lot of surface area contact, so the laces aren't going to want to wear down these outriggers as quickly as some other independent outriggers. Plus, up here in the ankle collar, you actually get 3 metal eyelet stays, which are fantastic. Just like I said, if you have to relace these, just get ready for a little bit of annoyance, or find somebody with really small and slender fingers to get in there to lace them up for you. And on the upper durability test, the Dremel 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, I honestly cannot believe the Dremel didn't bite through this top layer. However, it does not get through this elastic woven layer, really not even close. So even to really aggressive dragging and sliding, especially on an indoor hardwood court, you can really get a lot of degrees of freedom and not really have to worry about the durability of the uppers to sliding or just to a lot of blunt force trauma. And so for containment on the universal rating system, I'm gonna give them a 3.5 out of 5. Honestly, the lateral containment is fantastic. Nice little TPU stabilizer, goes right into this extra piece of foam right here, right in the lateral forefoot you'd be pivoting. This power tape does connect all 3 weaves here in this wrap, so it makes it much more of a cohesive unit, kind of all work together. However, it's the medial containment for me that takes down a few points. Now, if you're Mac McClung, that can be a huge asset, and it might be one for you too. It just kind of depends on which foot type you are, if this is gonna be something that helps or hurts you. But the thing that's hard to out-engineer is if you have all this padding and layering in the uppers, they are gonna hold on to heat a little bit more. If you look at the breathability test, got 166.1 degrees of warming versus 86.6 degrees of cooling after 30 seconds. So, you know, this isn't as good as some other shoes I've tested this year. It's kind of middle of the road, but just expect if you're playing with these on super hot, humid days, even though they look a little bit more minimal, they definitely have a lot of layers that could trap heat. So just kind of make sure you take the necessary precautions for that. And getting into the midsole teardown, this is where I was most curious about the Rise Nitros, what was under the hood, kind of what they could do for players like Mac McClung going into a dunk contest. And pretty interesting. The heel of these has a pretty big slab of nitro foam, which is a very responsive nitrogen infused foam. Now, the rest of the bed of the midsole is just kind of Puma's standard EVA. It is very bouncy, very elastic. It feels a lot like the TRC Blaze Quartz foam underneath of those. Just a really lively, springy, medium density foam, but it also has a bottom loaded X-plate shank. Now, Puma made this intentionally asymmetrical with a longer lever arm here into the forefoot on the medial side, where you'd be pushing off on your big toe joint. It's gonna give you a lot more of a lever arm under your big toe joint without having to have a really bulky and heavy shank. And if you look at the Rise Nitros on the single leg jump height test, 24 centimeters of jump height, which is the best shoe I've tested yet on that test. I think that has more to do with how light the shank is, a little more of a lever arm, but also that this entire bed of foam is nice and springy. Yeah, this slab of nitro foam is really nice, and it does give a nice spring back for crash landings or rebounding. However, just the engineering of the rest of the midsole in general with that medium density, really elastic, really lively foam is what's doing the majority of the work. And comparing the single leg jump height test to the bounce height test, got 35.5 centimeters of bounce height in the heel compared to 32 in the forefoot. You can see that the nitro foam combined with the rest of the foam there does give a nice little spring back. However, the forefoot is pretty good too. And so for bounce and shock absorption on the universal rating system, gonna give them a 5 out of 5 for both. These things get up up into the air so easily. And when you come down, they really do rebound pretty nicely as well. Now getting into the outsole tread, at first look, it looks like a standard kind of waving herringbone pattern. However, it really couldn't be further from the truth. What's going on here is this is a linear wave going through the shoe, which means it does not go horizontal, it goes axial, which means that these things do their best work going side to side and stopping side to side. And if you look at Mac McClung dunking on there, you always notice he pivots that forefoot at almost 45 degrees before he jumps. Now a lot of that's because he's twisting and spinning in the air, but that's also what gives you the most grip on these. I found when you're trying to go forward on these or kind of stop axially, they just really want to slide on you, or just not really slide, but you know, they have a lot more give than their shoes, versus when you're pivoting side to side or kind of at odd angles, kind of like a 45-degree angle, they stop on a dime. There's a big difference in doing this and this. And also it's pretty hard to see this unless you're looking right at them pretty close, but this X plate here actually bulges out the outsole tread on the lateral and medial side. So it does give you two really nice pivot points, especially when you're trying to jump. That tread juts out, giving you a little bit of grip, and that pro plate, or this X plate here, they call it a pro plate, really gives you a lot of balance with that. So the tread plus the shank is working kind of in concert to give a really nice springboard, especially when you're kind of going at odd angles or kind of off center. And if you look at the speed ratio, the Rise Nitro's got 2.07, which honestly isn't the fastest shoe on the speed ratio I've seen this year. The weight of them kind of takes that down, so it's more the uppers that are taking them down in terms of speed ratio. However, you're trying to make very quick moves side to side and pivot very hard side to side, or try to spring up into the air, these become very violently fast shoes. So it really depends what you put into the shoe, what you're going to get back out of them, and what footwork you're using, which determines how fast the shoe is going to be for you. And on the outsole durability test, the Dremel 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, about 1 millimeter of damage on a 2 millimeter tread depth. You know, these treads are pretty thin and they are pretty exposed. So on an outdoor court, these probably aren't going to last as long. On an indoor court, they're going to do pretty well. However, remember, this shoe is meant to really be screeching side to side. So I think with the footwork that some people are going to use with these, they may wear down faster than some other shoes. And I think the foam's going to hold up pretty well because of how long that X plate or Pro plate is. It's just, I think the outsole tread kind of might be the Achilles heel on these. And getting into the fit of the Rise Nitros, very pleasantly surprised. I think narrow, medium, and wide feet can go true to size. They tie down so well. Plus that wrap in the uppers really envelops pretty much all foot types, and the padding in the forefoot makes them comfortable for just about every foot type as well as shape. Now, if you're somebody with heel pain, that Nitro foam is going to be fantastic. Even somebody with forefoot pain, I think because that Pro plate offloads the forefoot so well, and you get a nice little slab of foam under there, I think they're pretty good too. Somebody with more overpronation, more painful overpronation, I should say, tendonitis, arch pain, you better be throwing an orthotic in these because they do like to pronate a lot. Now that does give them a lot of degrees of freedom and a lot of creativity. But in terms of someone that has that kind of snake bitten type inside of their foot, just watch out for it. And so for comfort on the universal rating system, these are an easy 4 out of 5. But getting into the most important aspect of the Rise Nitros, their playability, and why Mac McClung just absolutely went off in these in the dunk contest. And that's because not so much that they're such a good jumping shoe, or I should say an easy type jumping shoe, but the fact that they allow for so much contortion of your foot. If you watch all of his dunks, the NBA dunk contest, yeah, I mean, he got over 2 guys and kind of did a reverse dunk. But I think it was more how he could contort his body around those people, as well as how he could contort his body to even do some hezzies in the air before he went for some of those dunks as well. You know, he was really spinning really hard, pivoting off axis really hard when he was making these dunks. And I think that's because, number one, that tread allows him to kind of get his body almost at a 45-degree angle to the hoop, get a lot of pivoting power and a lot of lateral containment, while also allowing him to kind of pronate a lot more into those dunks and kind of get that foot contorted to the point where he could start spinning, or to start getting his body perfectly centered in the air to either get around somebody, get over somebody, or just whip his body around. So I think that Pro plate being able to, number one, push off on really off angles and give a little bit more cantilever bending, a little more of a diving board effect, the tread being able to stop and pivot really hard, as well as the shoe and the uppers allowing his forefoot to kind of feel the ground, move where he needs to, and get down, especially when you're coming down from all those dunks. That Nitro foam also going to give you just a little bit more forgiveness, although I'm sure he's wearing custom orthotics in his shoes. I mean, most, if not all, NBA players are. However, having that underfoot is still a huge asset. And I think what that means for your game is if you're looking for a shoe that gets up off the ground really, really easily, a shoe that a guard or a wing can get a jump shot up over, or a shoe that a smaller power forward can get up to to the room really quick as well. And I think someone that is a center can wear these if they are a lighter center. However, for a really big and bulky player, these are gonna pronate a lot, so you're gonna need a really big and bulky orthotic in there as well. But I would say if you're trying to get speed going side to side, and if you're trying to get up into the air very efficiently and very easily in multiple attempts, right? Like you're getting up off the ground quite a bit during a game, and I think these are really gonna save your foot over the long run. And if you're looking for a little more creativity in the air, I think these are an awesome pickup, and I think they were a perfect shoe to complement Mac McClung's win at the dunk contest. But of course, love to hear your thoughts on the Rise Nitros. If you tried them, do you want to try them? Has Mac McClung influenced you to get them? After all the crazy Chris Angel mind freak dunks he pulled off at the dunk contest, let me know in the comments down below. And if you want to see the shoe that Donovan Mitchell just scored 71 points in a game in, make sure you click into this video up above and subscribe down below. Respect your rubber and foam. I'll see you in the next one.